What if I told you? Asterisk that God can call you strong, exactly at the moment when you feel the weakest? Asterisk, it sounds contradictory, doesn't it? Asterisk, because normally we believe that God chooses the most prepared, the most confident, the bravest. Asterisk, but the story you're going to see today proves exactly the opposite. Israel was destroyed, afraid, hidden, an entire people living like fugitives within their own land. Asterisk, and in the middle of this chaos, God does not raise a king. He does not choose a general. He does not look for someone experienced. Asterisk, he chooses a hidden man, a man who is afraid, an insecure man. Asterisk, a man who, if he could, would not even be there. His name was Gideon. And the most impressive thing? Asterisk, before changing the history of a nation, God changed the way Gideon saw himself. But here is the point. Gideon did not believe it at first. He doubted. He questioned. He asked for signs. Asterisk, and even so, God chose him. So let me ask you something. What if your fear is not a hindrance? Asterisk, but exactly the place where God decided to begin? Asterisk, today, you will understand how God takes someone unlikely. Asterisk, transforms into a warrior and delivers a victory that can only be explained by the supernatural. And maybe, at the end of this story, you will realize that it is not just about Gideon. It is about you. The cycle seemed to have no end. Israel, the people chosen by God, once again had turned away. It was not sudden. It never is. Small compromises, small disobediences. And when they realized it, they were already living like the surrounding peoples. Asterisk, they exchanged the presence of God for idols. Asterisk, they exchanged the truth for pagan customs. Asterisk, they exchanged the living God for gods who did not speak. And then, as had happened before, the consequence came. For 7 years, 7 long years, Israel was given into the hands of the Midianites. Asterisk, but who were the Midianites? Asterisk, they were not just common enemies. They were a nomadic people, descendants of Midian, son of Abraham with Keturah. They knew the desert like no one else. They did not fight like a traditional army. They invaded like a plague. And that was exactly how it happened. When Israel planted, they came. Asterisk, when the harvest was ready, they appeared. Asterisk, they did not come few. They came like locusts. Men, camels, tents, a multitude impossible to count. They did not take only lands. They destroyed the sustenance. They left Israel without food, without hope, without dignity. Asterisk, the people who once crossed the Red Sea, now hid in caves. The people who saw miracles, now lived in fear. Can you imagine that? Asterisk, entire families fleeing to the mountains. Asterisk, hiding food in secret. Asterisk, living in silence, trying to survive. Asterisk, oppression, suffering, spiritual desert. Asterisk, and perhaps the most painful thing was not the hunger. It was the feeling of abandonment. Where was God? Asterisk, where were the miracles their parents told about? Asterisk, the story still existed, but the reality was different. Asterisk, and then, when the pain becomes unbearable. Asterisk, the people do something they should have done from the beginning. They cry out. It is not a beautiful cry. Asterisk, it is not religious. It is a cry of desperation. And God hears. Asterisk, but instead of immediately sending a deliverer, God does something curious. He sends a prophet, *A, man with no recorded name, with no prominence, with no history before this, *, but with a direct message, almost confrontational, *, I brought you out of Egypt, *, I delivered you from slavery, *, I gave you this land, *, but you did not obey my voice, * before deliverance, Comey's revelation, * before the miracle, comes confrontation, * because God was not only interested in delivering Israel from the Midianites, he wanted to deliver Israel from something deeper, their heart, *, and it is in this scenario of oppression, guilt, fear, and silence that the story changes direction. Not in a palace, not on the battlefield, but in an unlikely place, a winepress. The winepress was not a place to thresh wheat, *, it was a place to press grapes, *, but there was a man doing something strange, hidden, afraid, trying to save what little he had. This man was Gideon, from the tribe of Manasseh, from a family considered the weakest, *, and within the family. He saw himself as the least. Nothing in him drew attention. Nothing in him seemed special. No title, no position, no apparent courage. Only survival, *, fear, insecurity, unlikely, *, and then, without warning, heaven touches earth. The angel of the Lord appears, *, not with thunder, not with spectacle, but with a declaration that breaks all logic. *, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. *, mighty warrior? He was hiding. He was afraid. He was running. But God was not speaking to who Gideon was at that moment. God was speaking to who he would become. And here is something deep. *, while Gideon saw himself as weak, God already saw him as chosen. While Gideon saw limitation, God saw purpose. Gideon, unlikely, chosen by God, *, but that declaration does not generate immediate faith. It generates conflict, because it is hard to believe in a word when the reality around screams the opposite, and that is exactly where *, one of the most human, most sincere, * and deepest conversations in the entire Bible begins, because Gideon does not respond like a hero. He responds like someone wounded, *, and what he is about to say would echo in the heart of anyone who has ever felt forgotten by God. But that is already the next part of the story. *, that greeting still echoed in his mind. The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. But for Gideon, that made no sense at all. He looks around, sees destruction, poverty, fear, and then looks at himself, a man hidden, threshing wheat in a winepress. Nothing in that scene matched the word warrior. Nothing. *, and it is in this moment that Gideon does something that many feel, but few have the courage to say out loud. He questions, Lord, if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? And where are all his miracles that our fathers told us about? *, it was not rebellion. It was pain. It was confusion. It was a wounded faith trying to understand reality. * Gideon knew the stories. He knew about the God who parted the sea, who delivered Israel from Egypt, who performed signs and wonders. But now, that same people was hiding in caves, being oppressed daily. * Doubt, crisis of faith, suffering, Asterisk, notice something important. Gideon does not deny God. He just cannot reconcile who God is with what he is living. And perhaps this is one of the oldest questions of humanity. If God is with me, why does my reality seem to say otherwise? Asterisk, the biblical text does not show God rebuking Gideon for this question. On the contrary, God ignores the superficial doubt and responds to the deeper purpose. Asterisk, the Lord looks at Gideon, not at his fear, not at his insecurity, and says, asterisk, go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you? Asterisk, it is almost as if God says, you are looking at the problem, but I am looking at the solution, and it begins in you. But Gideon still cannot see it that way. He answers again, and now goes deeper. Asterisk, how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. Asterisk, insecurity, identity, limitation. Asterisk here, Gideon reveals what is really inside him. It is not just fear of the enemy. It is a distorted view of himself. Asterisk, he does not see himself as someone capable. He defines himself by weakness, by social position, by lack of importance. Asterisk, but God, once again, does not enter Gideon's logic. God does not begin to list qualities. He does not try to convince Gideon with human arguments. Asterisk, he gives only one answer. Asterisk, I will be with you. That answer changes everything, because God's calling was never based on Gideon's ability, but on God's presence with him, purpose. God's answer. Dependence. It was not about military strength. It was not about human strategy. It was about who was beside him. Even so, Gideon hesitates. Asterisk, faith does not arise instantly. It begins small, almost invisible, and then he makes a request. If I have found favor in your eyes, give me a sign that it is really you talking to me. He is not running away. He is trying to believe. Asterisk, Gideon prepares an offering, meat, unleavened bread, and broth. He brings everything carefully, like someone who wants to honor, but still needs confirmation. The angel of the Lord instructs, place everything on the rock, and then something supernatural happens. Asterisk, with the tip of the staff, the angel touches the offering, and fire comes out of the rock, consuming everything. It did not come from heaven. It did not come from a prepared altar. Asterisk, it came out of the rock, a direct sign, undeniable. In that instant, Gideon understands. He was not before a common messenger. He was before the Lord himself. The fear changes form. Before, he was afraid of the Midianite. Asterisk now. He fears having seen God face to face. And in that time, that meant death. But again, God speaks. Asterisk, peace be with you. Do not be afraid. You are not going to die. Asterisk, faith, confirmation, presence of God. And there, in that unlikely place, something new is born. Gideon builds an altar and calls it, the Lord is peace. Asterisk, curious, isn't it? Asterisk, in the middle of war. Asterisk, in the middle of chaos. Asterisk, in the middle of oppression. He declares peace, not because the situation changed, but because now he knew that God was with him, and that changes everything. Asterisk, but if Gideon thought the greatest challenge was facing the Midianites, he was mistaken, because God does not begin the transformation outside. He begins inside the house, And the next step would require something much more difficult than facing an army. Asterisk, it would require facing the very root of idolatry. That same night, God speaks again with Gideon, not about the Midianites, not about war strategy, not about armies. God begins with something much closer and much more difficult. Asterisk, tear down your father's altar to Baal, and cut down the sacred pole beside it. Silence. Perhaps for the first time, Gideon understands that Israel's problem did not begin with enemies from outside, but with altars raised inside the house. Idolatry, transformation, obedience. Asterisk Baal was not just a name. He was a deity worshipped by the Canaanite peoples, associated with fertility, rain, and prosperity. For many in Israel, it seemed more practical to trust in Baal than to wait on the invisible God. Asterisk, and the most impactful thing? The altar was not in a distant temple. It was in Gideon's father's house. Asterisk, this reveals something deep. Idolatry was no longer just a national problem. It was personal, familiar, rooted. Now, Gideon's calling gains a new dimension. Before delivering Israel, he needed to take a stand inside his own house. Asterisk, but this was not simple. Asterisk, tearing down that altar meant challenging the culture of the city. It meant confronting established beliefs. It meant risking death. And Gideon knew that imperfect courage, fear, decision. So he does what he can. He obeys. But at night, asterisk, maybe someone looks at this and thinks he lacked courage. But the Bible shows something different. He was afraid. And even so he obeyed. That is courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. Asterisk, it is obeying despite it. Asterisk, Gideon takes 10 men, goes to the altar, and in the silence of the night, begins to tear down what for years had been considered sacred. Asterisk, stone by stone, structure by structure. The altar of Baal falls. The sacred pole is cut down, and in the place of idolatry, something new is built. Gideon raises an altar to the Lord and offers a sacrifice. Substitution. God does not only remove the false, he establishes the true. Spiritual transformation. Positioning. Asterisk, but what is done in secret soon comes to light. Asterisk, when the sun rises, the city wakes up and realizes the altar of Baal destroyed. Asterisk, the sacred pole cut down. Asterisk, and in its place an altar to the God of Israel. The reaction is immediate. Indignation, revolt, fury. Asterisk, who did this? Asterisk, the question echoes through the city until they discover. Asterisk, it was Gideon, son of Joash. Now the tension rises. Men go to Gideon's father's house with a sentence ready. Asterisk, bring your son. He must die. It was not just anger. It was an attempt to preserve a system, a culture, a false security. Asterisk, conflict, risk, consequence. Asterisk, and at that moment, something unexpected happens. Asterisk, Gideon's father, owner of the altar, stands up. Asterisk, he could protect his own reputation. Asterisk, he could hand over his son. Asterisk, he could choose the easiest side, but he does the opposite. He answers with a logic that dismantles everything. Asterisk, will you defend Baal? If Baal is a god, let him defend himself. Silence. It is as if, suddenly, Everyone realizes the absurdity of the situation. Asterisk, if that God needed men to defend him, what kind of God was he? The crowd backs away, and Gideon does not die. Asterisk on that day. He receives a new name, Cherubal, which means let Baal contend against him. But Baal does not fight, because Baal does not answer. Asterisk, because Baal is not God. Asterisk, identity, turning point, spiritual authority. And there, something changes. Gideon has not yet faced the Midianites. Asterisk, but he has already won an essential battle, the battle against idolatry, the battle against the fear of taking a stand, the battle inside the house. Because before God uses someone publicly, he deals with that person in secret. But now, asterisk after this act, after this positioning, asterisk the conflict stops being only spiritual and becomes visible. The Midianites, Amalekites, and peoples of the east unite again. Asterisk, they cross the Jordan and camp in the valley of Jezreel. The war is about to begin, but Gideon still does not feel ready. Asterisk even after everything. Asterisk even after the sign. Asterisk even after obedience. There is still a struggle inside him, and what he does next reveals something deep about him in faith. Asterisk, because before the battle, asterisk, he will seek one more confirmation. The scenario is now different. The war is no longer a distant threat. It is already before their eyes. The Midianites, together with the Amalekites and peoples of the east, spread across the valley of Jezreel like a dense cloud. Their camels are countless. Their number, impossible to measure. It is not just an army. It is an overwhelming force. Asterisk, and at that moment, something powerful happens with Gideon. Asterisk, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. Asterisk, purpose, calling, authority. That man hidden in the winepress now rises. He blows the trumpet. Asterisk, the sound echoes through the region. A call to war, a call to action. Asterisk, and surprisingly, men begin to respond. The tribe of Abiezer gathers. Then Manasse, asterisk Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali. Suddenly, Gideon is no longer alone. An army begins to form. Asterisk, chosen by God. Movement, response. Asterisk, but even with all of this happening, asterisk, even with the Spirit of God upon him, asterisk, even with people gathering, Gideon still carries something inside him. Insecurity, doubt, not about God, but about himself. And then, once again, he speaks with God. Asterisk, if you will really save Israel through me, as you have promised. Asterisk, do you see? He is not denying the calling. He is trying to confirm that he is not deceiving himself. Asterisk, and then he proposes something simple, but deep. Asterisk, I will place a piece of wool on the threshing floor. If in the morning there is dew only on the fleece and all the ground is dry, I will know that you will save Israel by my hand. Asterisk, faith, confirmation, insecurity. Asterisk, in that region, dew was common. During the night, the moisture in the air condensed on the ground. Asterisk, but what Gideon asks challenges natural logic, and God responds. The next morning, Gideon rises, goes to the fleece, and squeezes it. Asterisk, so much water comes out that it fills a bowl. Asterisk, meanwhile, the ground around it is completely dry. A clear sign, a silent miracle. Asterisk, direct answer. But the story does not end there, because even in the face of the miracle, Gideon still feels the weight of responsibility. He makes a second request, and this time he already knows that he is pushing the limit. Do not be angry with me, Lord. Let me make just one more request. Humility, fear, awareness. Now he reverses the test. Let this time the fleece be dry, and all the ground around it be wet with dew. God's patience. Process of faith. And again. God responds. The next morning. Exactly as Gideon asked, the fleece is dry, and all the ground around wet. No natural explanation, no coincidence, no doubt. Now Gideon knows. Not because he became strong, but because God was patient. This reveals something powerful. God does not reject those who have sincere doubts. He strengthens them. Gideon's faith is not born ready. It is built. Step by step. Sign after sign. Obedience after obedience. Spiritual growth. Dependence on God. And now, finally, everything is ready for war. An army gathered, a confirmed leader, a promise established. But what Gideon still does not know is that God is about to do something completely unexpected, something that makes no military sense, something that challenges all human logic, because sometimes, the greatest problem is not having few resources. It is thinking that you already have enough, and the next move of God, will completely change the course of this battle. The sun had not even fully risen when Gideon and his men took their positions. Around them. The scene was intimidating. The valley was filled. Midianites, Amalekites, and peoples of the east spread like sand in the desert. Their camels were countless. Their tents covered the land. It was the kind of sight that makes any army lose courage before the battle even begins. And yet, Gideon was not alone. 32,000 men had gathered, a significant number, a number that, in human eyes, began to bring a certain hope. But then, God speaks. You have too many men. Silence. Too many? Facing an uncountable army? Human logic would say exactly the opposite. But God is not concerned with numbers. He is concerned with something deeper. So that Israel may not say, my own strength has saved me. Dependence on God. Purpose, correction of perspective. The battle would not only be against the Midianite, as that it would be against pride. It would be against the illusion of self-sufficiency. And then God begins a process that seems unsettling. Tell the people, whoever is afraid may go home. A simple proposal. But with a gigantic impact. 22,000 men leave. Army is reduced to 10,000. Gideon watches it happen, perhaps in silence, perhaps trying to understand, but God is not finished yet. There are still too many men. Now, any sense of security begins to disappear. God takes the people to the water, and there, he makes an unusual separation. The men who kneel and put their faces directly into the water. On one side, those who bring the water with their hand to their mouth. On the other, no explanation, no military logic, Only obedience. And then comes the final number. 300 men. Impossible. Divine strategy. Selection. Asterisk from 32,000 to 300. Now there is no margin to trust in human strength. Now it is impossible to win without God. And that is exactly the point. God does not reduce to weaken. Asterisk, he reduces to reveal. But even so, God still cares for Gideon's heart. That night, before the battle, the Lord says, asterisk, if you are still afraid, go down to the enemy camp. Asterisk once again. Grace. Asterisk once again. Care. Asterisk Gideon goes down, accompanied by his servant. Asterisk and there, hidden. He hears something unexpected. A man tells a dream. A loaf of barley bread, simple, common, without value, rolls into the Midianite camp and knocks down a tent. And the other answers, this can only be the sword of Gideon. God has given the Midianites into his hands. Asterisk, confirmation. Supernatural. Divine intervention. The enemy was already afraid, even before the battle began. Asterisk Gideon hears that, and something changes inside him. Asterisk he bows down and worships. Now there is no more doubt. Now there is conviction. Asterisk he returns to the camp and gives an order that seems absurd. Asterisk, get up. The Lord has given the Midianite camp into your hands. Asterisk, but there are no swords being distributed. Asterisk, there are no armors. There is no conventional strategy. Gideon divides the 300 men into 3 groups. Asterisk, and gives each one a trumpet, a clay jar, and a torch hidden inside the jar. Divine strategy, dependence, faith in action, strange weapons for a war. But this was never a common battle. Asterisk, in the middle of the night, at the moment of the changing of the guards, they position themselves around the camp. Silence, tension, asterisk, and then everything happens at once. The trumpets are blown, the jars are broken, the torches appear, and all shout, asterisk, for the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. Asterisk, miracle. Impact, chaos. The sound echoes, the light breaks the darkness. The enemy wakes in desperation. Confusion, shouts, running. Asterisk, without understanding what is happening, they begin to fight each other. Asterisk, swords are raised, but against their own allies. Chaos takes over, and without Israel needing to fight directly, God delivers the victory. Divine intervention. Supernatural victory. The enemies flee. They are pursued and defeated. A victory that cannot be explained by human strategy. A victory that cannot be attributed to strength. Asterisk, a victory that can only be explained by God. Asterisk Gideon, the unlikely, the hidden, the insecure, now is the instrument of a national deliverance. But the story is not over yet. Asterisk, because sometimes, asterisk, the greatest danger is not before the victory, but after it. And what happens next reveals something even deeper about the human heart. The war is over. The people who once hid in caves now celebrate. Asterisk, the enemy that seemed invincible has been defeated. Israel is free. And at the center of this victory is a man no one expected. Gideon, victory. Miracle chosen by God. But the story does not end on the battlefield, because many times The greatest test does not come before victory. It comes after. As the days go by, something begins to happen. Asterisk, the people look at Gideon, not only as a leader, but as a savior. And then they make a request. Rule over us. You, your son, and your grandson. It was more than honor. It was a proposal of power. Asterisk, it was the chance to establish a dynasty. Asterisk, it was the opportunity to be. King. Asterisk now. Think for a moment. Asterisk after everything Gideon lived. Asterisk after seeing God act in such a powerful way. Asterisk, what would the answer be? Asterisk, and surprisingly, he answers well. Asterisk, I will not rule over you, nor will my son. The Lord will rule over you. Asterisk, humility, recognition, dependence on God. Asterisk, so far, everything is right. Asterisk, Gideon understands something fundamental. The victory was not his. The people do not belong to him. The rule belongs to God. But this is where the story makes a silent turn. Asterisk, without noise, without direct warning, Gideon makes a request. Asterisk, give me. Each one, an earring from the plunder. Asterisk, it was common for enemies to wear gold earrings. And the people, with joy, give them. Asterisk, he gathers that gold, and then does something that, at first glance, may seem harmless. He builds an ephod. Asterisk. Warning. Decision. Consequence. Asterisk, the ephod, in the biblical context, was a piece connected to the priesthood, used to consult God, but it should not be made by just anyone, nor placed in just any place. Gideon places that ephod in his own city, Ophrah. And then, asterisk, what began as something apparently spiritual, becomes a trap. The text says, asterisk, all Israel prostituted themselves there, idolizing it. Silence, the same man who tore down the altar of Baal, asterisk now, without realizing, becomes a cause of idolatry. Idolatry. Spiritual fall. Vigilance. It was not from one moment to another. It was not a declared rebellion. Asterisk. It was subtle. It was gradual. It was dangerous. Asterisk, and this reveals something deep. It is not enough to start well. It is necessary to watch until the end. Asterisk, Gideon brought deliverance to Israel, but he could not prevent the heart of the people from turning away again. And perhaps not even his own heart remained completely intact. Asterisk, the story says that the land had peace for 40 years. Asterisk, but after Gideon's death, Israel returns to doing what is evil, returns to idols, returns to the cycle, spiritual cycle, human fragility. Asterisk, and here is a truth that echoes to this day. Spiritual victories do not make us immune to future falls. They make us responsible to remain vigilant. Asterisk, Gideon began with fear. Hidden, feeling incapable. Asterisk, fear, unlikely. Insecurity. But he was chosen by God, called a warrior even before believing it. Asterisk, and step by step, between doubts, signs, imperfect obedience, and faith in construction, he became exactly what God said he was: purpose, transformation, faith. But his story also reminds us the danger is not only in weakness, it is also in success without vigilance. God does not look for the strongest. Asterisk, he looks for the available. Asterisk, not those who are already ready. Asterisk, but those who are willing to obey, even with fear. Asterisk, because the power was never in Gideon. It was always in God. And maybe the question is not, am I capable? But rather, am I available? Because God still calls the unlikely, still transforms the insecure. Still uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. And what if the greatest miracle? Is not the victory you are waiting for. But who you are becoming in the process. And what if God is already looking at you? Not as you see yourself today. But as someone he has already decided to use. Chosen by God. Purpose transformation. Because in the end. God saw a warrior in Gideon, even before Gideon believed it. Thank you for watching until here. See you in the next video.